Hi there. Last time you saw me put in the bulkheads. The next step is to install the centerboard case. As I put in the bulkhead here, this is also the forward wall in the centerboard case. But I need to make an inner wall here and install this part, this small part bulkhead here. So we will start with cutting out the side wall. I take several measurements on each distance to reduce the risk for errors before I draw the side cover and cut out the piece. This is 4mm plywood, so it's very easy to cut. Considering its weight, it's also very strong. Of course, more strength will be added during lamination. I try out the piece at the location, and it seems to fit well. Also with the back end piece. Thus I can start cutting out glass for the lamination. I use unthickened epoxy to pre-wet the wood. Some of the epoxy will be sucked up into the wood. Thus it's important to pre-wet so that the laminate won't dry out. I lay down the cloth and wet it out. After a couple of hours I'm back to refill the laminate. I noticed some small air bubbles trapped under and in the cloth. With the heat gun I re-liquidize the laminate, so that I can remove the bubbles by pressing them out with the rubber squeegee. After a night of curing I can turn the board and repeat the process on this side as well. I notice that there are some gaps and misalignments. Thus I cut off a small strip about 1 cm from the bulkhead and the matching piece from the hull bottom. Now I think it will fit better and align with the back end bulkhead. Although I will need to sand down the inside of the hull to better follow the bend in the bulkhead. I do this outdoors to limit dust problems. I also take down the shiny surface on the joining sides, as that will improve bonding when I glass over this. The remaining gap will probably be possible to close with force. I will use clamps to close gaps and push the board in place. I will need to glue the bulkhead to the hull in several steps. I notice I forgot to sand for the bulkhead gluing. But now I can put it in place. I add small strips of glass over the joinings. This will make the bond much stronger. Here I can put strips on both sides, although not yet all the way up to the clamp. Here in the front the fit is fine, and I laminate the joining. I use a clamp and a stick to keep the piece in place while curing. I can add strips here as well. The day after, the first part of the rounding has cured, and I can dry fit how to get the upper part to comply before I start gluing. And laminate this joint. The clamp pushed the bulkhead to follow the bend in the hull, but also out of alignment with the side wall. I will need to do something about this as well. Clamps and sticks. Now I can glue this and glass over the joint. as well as the rest of the bulkhead. When the sidewall is in place, I can cut off the excess from the hull bottom. I cut alongside the wall. To use gravity to my advantage, I turn the hull before I start glassing over the bare wood edge. This strip will also extend out onto the hull so that the joining will be strong. Here I use somewhat thickened epoxy. I want epoxy that wets out well, but also stay in the sloping surface. This is all for this episode. Next time I will start on building strong points for fittings.